Well, here we are tonight with our favorite group of conservatives to talk about the hot issues in the area and across the world and get a conservative view. So why don't we start with introductions? Bobby?
I am Bob Burns, local politician from Hopedale.
Serving in several slots in Hopedale.
Several.
Chris Morin, member of the Finance Committee.
Ed Bertorelli, longtime Republican activist and currently chairman of the Milford Republican Town Committee. And on behalf of my conservative friends here, I'd like to thank you, Al, for having us on the show. And you're doing a good service.
Thank you, sir. Now, probably the hottest topic, or one of the hot topics, has been, should we be housing illegal immigrant children in our state? Somebody want to start with a view?
Well, the issue for now seems to be temporarily resolved. I use the word temporarily because when President Obama put the sort of proffer out there of what states would take them, a number of states with Democratic governors said no. Deval was one of the first, Patrick was one of the first to say yes, whether it's because of his friendship with the president or whether it's they hold similar views on it is an issue. It certainly became a firestorm. I'm sure there are many people behind the scenes, Republican and Democrats, who are opposed to bringing them here. I would venture a majority of the Democrats in the state legislature were opposed to it. Certainly the Democrats in Chicopee and down the Cape who were affected by it were certainly opposed to it.
But is it a partisan issue really, Ed?
No, I don't think in this particular thing it was, because I think it was so unpopular that a large percentage of the Democrats were against it. So it sort of doomed it from the beginning. It just wasn't a Republican issue.
Bobby?
Well, having worked in social services for 40 years, there are greater issues here than Republican and Democrat. Number one, somebody needs custody of these children. You can't just bring a child to the doctor and say, give him a shot, operate on him, fix his broken leg, give him medicine without someone having legal custody of that child. So you need someone to step up as the custodian. That can be the state, but that's a lot of kids to be custodian of all at once. And number two, you have children, you have no idea what type of inoculations they've had, what type of diseases they have. When my children went to school, when we transferred them from one school to the next, we had to have immunization records. These children have none. So now you come up to, what are you going to do with these kids? You can't put them in school until they get immunization records. I can't ask you to take them into your home because you're going to want to know where they came from. I mean, maybe they have tuberculosis, maybe they've been exposed to it, maybe they have Ebola, maybe they have chicken pox, maybe they don't have anything. But we have no way of telling that. We need medical screenings on these kids and
But you're not
so
gonna
much
get
more.
that. I mean, these
That's
kids
right.
show up at the border, right? You got 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds. Let me play devil's advocate. What do you do with them?
Put
Do
them
you
on
just
the
turn
plane.
them around and
Put them on the plane and fly them right back to the country they came from. That
they're
would be my
in
decision.
the country. They're at the Mexican border.
Well,
Okay?
Well, then they're in Mexico. That's where they would
Can
stay.
you look at a 4-year-old who needs help and says, please, mister, help me, and turn your back?
Suppose that would be a conversation I would have with the Mexican president.
Chris?
Massachusetts really has, as blue as this state is, it's actually has quite a red stance on immigration, and it has for a long time. As Ed has mentioned, I think if you talk to even a lot of the Democratic members of Congress here in Massachusetts, they are against the illegal immigration and the policies in it. And that's why it's so surprising in a state that is so blue that we actually have a tough stance on immigration in here. And I'm talking about our Congress, not our governor.
In a
because our
state
Congress
that's
has
so
to get
full of
reelected.
immigrants.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. I mean, Texas, California, Arizona have more, but we have a ton
we have a lot of immigrants, but we have actually a low number of illegal immigrants in this state. We have, I think it was the last survey, because unfortunately it's very inaccurate because no one's going to raise their hand, wave in the air and say, hi, I'm an illegal immigrant. So they're very hard to count. But there was something like only 3% of the population were illegal immigrants, I think as late as 2011. So we do have a very low population in this state, and I think it's because of the stance that the Congress has. Like I said, it's not the governor, but our state legislature.
You've got softies on the border, and they say, these kids, maybe they've been exposed to diseases, maybe they aren't healthy. I can't turn my back on them. But hold on a minute. Fundamental question. Aren't I opening the door to just encourage more people to send their children if I take them in?
Well, the question would be, number one, Mexico is a very big trading partner of the United States. We're very influential in the country. The question would be, Mexico is an extraordinarily large country, long. So these children who are not from Mexico made the journey from countries below Mexico all the way through Mexico. I ventured 2,000 miles, 1,500 miles, and no one noticed. Okay, number one. So the Mexican government in itself, because Mexico has a very strict policy. If Guatemalans or anyone tried to go into Mexico and work, they're deported. Okay, Mexico has their own policy. Then the other question is, we had the whole scandal in Massachusetts, which is now, Deval has presided over an amazing number of scandals and lapses in the state and has escaped criticism, largely. And the one is the collapse of the care of foster children and children in Massachusetts with deaths of people. So we're looking at, we can't take care of the children we have here who are better or worse in tragic situations. So we're going to bring in several thousand more, which is going to tax a system that's basically on the verge of collapse.
And see, that's one argument, because I know I'm a softie. As tough as I want to be, I look at a kid hurting, I got a hard time. But on the other hand, when I see that we don't have enough money to take care of our own kids, you know, I look at some of the special needs kids who are growing up, and what we give them for money, to me, is criminal.
Well,
these kids didn't do anything. They were born that way, and you turn around and say, they should have a good life. We're wealthy enough as a commonwealth that we should be able to take care of them properly. And we cry we don't have enough money.
But it isn't a question of just of money. It's a question of competence. It isn't money, because if you throw money at certain problems and give money to certain parents who are in situations, they're going to spend it on things that do not benefit the children, as we know. So it's a tragic situation, but I think we saw the underlying concern that people in Massachusetts have and communities have, because it's interesting that certain communities in Massachusetts are used as dumping grounds. They're not the Wellesleys, the Westons, the Brooklines, or Newtons. No, they're the Milfords, the Chicopes, the Lynns, Brockton, or whatever. You know, you ask to put a group home in one of these towns that are liberal bastions, and the people say, no way. Oh, please. A school, and as you brought up special ed, a school for development delayed kid, a special ed. Oh, absolutely not. It'll affect my property values. So, I mean, it's an interesting thing. And to go to what Chris said, Massachusetts has played a very interesting game, because even though we only have maybe 3% of our population is illegal, Massachusetts has been counting them as residents to avoid losing more congressional representation.
Sure. Right.
It's estimated that we could have lost 2 congressional seats instead of one the last time if illegals weren't counted, and also college students. They've dummied up the books in certain ways to count the college students in one state and another, count illegals as residents but not citizens. So we're looking at a situation where any number of people in the state are, you know, in that situation, but it sort of brought it to a head.
I saw an internet cartoon that at first seemed kind of trite, but showed 3 seniors in a rowboat being picked up by the Coast Guard in California. And the Coast Guard says, what are you guys doing? They said, we're rowing to Mexico, because then we're going to declare ourselves illegal aliens and get the benefits that we're not entitled to as citizens. Oh. You know, now, it's kind of an ugly shot, but it does bring the fact that there is limited resources. should we be helping other countries before we help our own families?
Well, in my opinion, is absolutely not. Absolutely not. That American children, American adults, the needy in America, the hungry, the poor, the homeless, whatever in America should be taken care of first. They should be our number one priority. And those are the people where the money should go to.
And you know something? I have less of a hard issue when you have, and I know it's horrible, and I'm going to be called terrible, people who've screwed up their lives on drugs, on alcohol, on things. Okay, you made that decision. But we've got a whole group of kids and adults who never did anything wrong. They just need extra help. And you see these people fighting and doing absolutely everything. And you turn around and say, but we can't afford to really take care of you.
And there's no question, as what you spoke to about, I think there's a bill on the governor's desk right now that several members of the legislature are very angry because one thing was not thrown in there for the assistance, that legal people would have first dibs on housing over illegals. And it was not put on the bill for the governor. And there were several members of the legislature that were very angry. They're like, why couldn't we get that on there? Then when it comes for the assistance for housing, that people, legal residents of this state, should get first dibs on that. And it shouldn't be have illegals. And unfortunately, that would not get on the bill.
Well,
and I have a problem with that.
There's a fundamental issue when you sit there and say, wait a minute, if I've played by the rules, I'm legal. I have to take a step behind somebody who isn't?
So what does it encourage?
Yeah, exactly. But that's my point.
What are you
And
rewarding?
Bobby, I know that I would be ill. I would be sick if I had to look at 2 or 3 of these little kids on the border and say, no. You know, when my daughter taught in Worcester, we had to keep telling her. She was in a special program of the very needy. You can't bring these kids home. Because she kept saying, Dad, they go home, they don't get help with their meds, they don't, can't we just help? It's like, I could just see her trying to fill my house, and you want to.
Well,
Can
You
I
do as much as you can.
But again,
there has
that's-
to be a line
that's-
at
Can
some
I
point.
point out one thing to you? When you're standing on that border, those children on that border were not homeless until they got on the train and started to go through Mexico. Okay?
But isn't that the same issue the Europeans are facing through Turkey, through Italy?
Well-
You've got all the North Africans, and it's like, go ahead. Just don't stop in my country, and we won't get in your way.
In Europe is a different situation because in the earliest immigration in Europe was people from, after World War II, was from Southern Europe, Italians and Greeks and whatever, to Northern Europe, and Switzerland and
But
France.
today
The
it's North
second,
Africa.
the second group was when the colonial empires fell. England offered easier citizenship to citizens there, and France did the same for its colony, and also the Algerians, okay? So they came in. But what you're facing in Europe now, in a country like Holland, or the Netherlands, is Islamic extremists who are basically advocating to the Dutch, if we take control, we are going to put Sharia law into the country. And there was a demonstration where basically they got up and they were, when the Middle Eastern War was going on, you had a government-sponsored demonstration in Holland that took an anti-Semitic tone where people were singing Nazi chants. Arabs were. So the situation has gotten very crazy over there. I mean, it's like a mixture of things that
But again,
luckily we
and
don't have to deal with.
Fundamental question. Why don't we just close the border?
Well, Thomas Jefferson said a country without borders isn't a country. So, but the question is closing the borders. Number one, there's no real will to do it, number one.
Yeah.
See, I don't believe that if we wanted to, if we decided we're closing the U.S.-Mexican border, that there's not the means to do it. Maybe expensive, and some people argue probably less expensive than what we're paying for social services. But why do you think we don't just say, okay, all these bases we have, we're going to locate them around Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas and shut down the border?
Well, I think certain groups benefit from having these people here because they come in, they get them services, and they now technically are your base. and you're growing your base by having these people come in. And I hate to say it, it sounds rude like that, but selfishly, I think groups like that they're growing their base that way.
Well,
also-
it's pretty clear a whole crop of Democratic Party politicians have really invested a lot in encouraging illegals and encouraging benefits for illegals.
But wait a minute, I'm confused. If I'm an illegal alien,
Well,
how do I vote?
there isn't a question of that. The question is exactly what Chris says. If people are getting services, the public employee unions and the other people that benefit from more clients, there's more money thrown at
Bobby,
them.
you had?
I was going to say that that they also provide a service. There's a service that they provide that is not mentioned much at all, and that is cheap labor.
Yes.
Because you can exploit them. You can exploit them. You can go to. There are usually places where they congregate. So in the morning, if you need 3 or 4 or 5 people to labor on your job, you drive up, you pick them up, you bring them on the job. At the end of the day, you pay them $3, $4, $5 an hour, cash, and
Now,
So
no
two groups are
obligation.
getting
hold on, let me
exploited.
ask you a question, because this is a debate that can go on. We had local company here, scientific producer, had an office in Riyadh, in Saudi, and I employed there an office boy. And this man worked for $200 a month, and Mishpah would show up whenever I flew in, 1 in the morning, 2 in the morning, he was there to pick me up. I want to go somewhere 7 days a week, he's taking me around. And we always felt terrible that here's a guy with a family at home working for $200 a month. I think he told us eventually with all the tips we gave him, he was maybe making $700-ish, $750 a month. And when I asked him, I said, how is it that you stay here year after year away from your family? And he said, very simple. I make 15 years worth of income for every year I'm here.
Sure.
So now I ask a question. Are we exploiting these people, really? Because we're comparing it to our understanding, our level.
No.
But if we sent them all home
Yeah.
and said, get out, and Mishpah told me, if I could find a job in Bangladesh back then, I could make $1 a day. He says, so 720 days versus $20, it's almost like, you know,
Right.
The word exploiting is a loaded word, and it comes attached with all our values that we have as people. It's a fact of life that people need money to survive. It's a fact of life when our ancestors came here and did grueling work, like the Irish doing the subways in New York and in Boston, the tunnelers, the Italian quarry workers who got illnesses from mining and working there. Yes, they worked for whatever the wages were, and part of the year they didn't work, but that was life, and it always has, and it's always going to be that way. So to wring anyone's hands when many of us come from privilege is very
it just
interesting.
bothers me because
Well,
if I sit there and say, okay, in my, ethereal view of the world, I don't want these people taken advantage of. If I could, I send them all home. Okay.
that
Have I
doesn't make
done them
any
any
sense.
favors?
That doesn't make any sense.
I mean, if I sent them back to their home countries, have I made their life better?
Well,
No.
let's steer this to the political thing in the state, and it's very interesting that people have discovered, obviously with Deval in Deval Patrick in office, that there's really a minimal effort to make sure that people getting benefits are either citizens or deserve the benefits or using the benefits for things that benefit their children and their families, not cigarettes, alcohol, drugs, scratch tickets, and so on, and also illegals getting benefits and whatever. And there seems to be, at least among the 2 Democrats running for governor, it seems Grossman is steered far to the left on issues, advocating licenses for illegals, basically more of Deval. Coakley is sort of brought over to the left in a way, but she's sort of a passive participant in this with the lead she has in the polls. And then you have Baker. But I think the thing that's Chris brought up before is the conservatism in the state about illegals is we're now discovering that when these laws were put in place, to get an EBT card, to get welfare benefits or whatever, you literally don't have to prove anything. And when you go in with an EBT card, there's no picture on it, there's no picture on an ID
Bob,
or
let me ask you
anything.
a question. This whole debate, and I am stumped on putting somebody's picture on a government card. I mean, this whole ID thing, I don't understand. I'm not supposed to be able to, or I'm not supposed to ask people for an ID when they vote. Yet I can't go into a government building.
Can't get a bottle of wine without a
Well,
picture
no,
of
but I mean,
ID.
forget that. I can't fly on a plane. I can't go in a government building without showing a government
Right.
ID. What's the deal with putting somebody's picture on an EBT card?
Nothing.
I don't understand how that is discriminatory.
It isn't.
Every time I paid for something by check the other day, I needed to provide a picture ID. I went and cashed a check at the bank. I had to provide a picture ID. I'm asked for IDs 20 times a month. Yet there are people that go around and have EBT cards, mass health cards, housing, and they don't have any ID.
Yeah.
And I'm flummoxed as to how these people get through the process.
Let me throw another one, Chris. When I went to work for Harvard Apparatus, they were very clear. We're going to make you an offer contingent on you passing a drug test. Candidly, I sat there and said, test away as long as you don't test for alkaloids. If you go for caffeine, I'm in deep trouble. Don't take away my coffee. But I hear that to get free government aid, it would be a very bad thing that you have to stay drug-free and prove it.
Well, who said it's a bad thing?
Well, but see, I guess here's my
You're
curiosity.
You're being prejudiced if you bring that up, and that's the problem. Everyone is worried about stepping on the third rail and saying something wrong because that makes you racist or prejudiced. Why? That's
It
what
isn't.
I don't understand.
Well, the question is
If
what
I went to
people
you
follow
tomorrow
that.
and
Yeah.
said, I'm worried,
Yeah.
for you to get whatever, I want to test you for heroin, what would you say?
Let's go.
Who you want me to pee in a cup? Here you go. I have nothing
Well-
to worry about.
Well, we mentioned before, Bob mentioned the country of Mexico. Country of Mexico is very large, population-wise. They require a voter ID when you go in to vote. It has your picture on it. It works in Mexico, but according to and again, the liberals in the country here, it's discriminatory and it would discourage voting. Everyone in Mexico produces a voter ID with their picture on it.
Then why is it's not discriminatory to say you can't fly on a plane or you can't go to some of the courthouses without a government ID, right?
Yeah.
Maybe courthouses,
Well,
but the
I-
government.
but if you look beyond the issue, these charges that are made when people want to crack down on this are designed to encourage the programs to grow, and many times they grow through abuse. And because they grow, then people see, well, see, we need them. And so it's a never-ending factor that people are basically in Massachusetts. The Massachusetts is basically a one-party state. Okay,
There's a dozen Republicans somewhere.
Yeah.
There's many
free here.
Republican-leaning people, but we're talking about the apparatus of the legislature with an occasional governor accepted or whatever, and their grouping and their meshing, which are the public employee unions, the social worker unions, and whatever, the trade unions, are all in this to basically increase government as it goes. And we've got a classic thing that's going to come up on the ballot, to roll back the gas tax. In other words, don't tie it to inflation. We'll see how that works, but already the public employee unions and the other unions are already saying vital projects in the state are going to be, highways and bridges are going to be impaired because if we lower the gas tax. But it's interesting that many people in the legislature.
Yeah, but wait a minute, I didn't hear lower.
No.
What I heard was a group
Not
in the
tied
state want you to vote, stand up and be counted every time you increase that tax.
That's right.
That's exactly
I
right.
didn't
That
hear.
was the question.
Right.
Because
But the first thing was an increase, and then when the bill was passed, there was an increase in the gas tax, and then it was tied to inflation.
You know, I'm actually okay with our legislators standing up saying, "I'm going to increase your taxes, and this is why."
Roll call vote.
Roll call vote.
To
There
me,
should be nothing
exactly.
but roll call
It was a
votes.
cowardly way. It was a cowardly way to continually to raise taxes and not have to say the word "yay"
Yeah.
in public.
Well, of
That's
course
all
it
it was.
And
Of
that's my
course it is.
problem.
And they
with-
did with this. They did the same with their salaries.
Yeah, it was tied the same
Sure.
thing. Was tied
And
to
by the
inflation.
way, almost all the reps in this area who weren't Republicans voted for those
Yes.
things. So you have to start tying the actual votes that people make to people we know, and that's the problem.
Well, speaking of people we know, Dick
So.
Moore.
Yep.
I mean, when he and Abe Lincoln first ran, they started, and I don't think he's had anybody seriously against him. He had a young lady that a few years ago, Kim tried, but
Well, Dick Moore's a very interesting career because he obviously is a Hopedale native. Okay, he was born and raised in Hopedale. He held office in Hopedale, and then he challenged way back a state rep from Upton named Creighton, from Uxbridge named Creighton. He lost as a Democrat. He lost that primary, and he then campaigned some
well, I
more.
mean, isn't that the joke? Is Dick, which side of the red or blue spectrum is he?
Well-
he feels more purple to me than blue.
Well, the question is, I think the thing is that he has sort of been even the odd man out in his own party, because he's tried several times for leadership positions, but he's too conservative a Democrat to be in the
Yeah,
leadership
but Ed,
position.
I guess the Senate leader pro tem
And we're not
doesn't
talking-
sound low end.
No, that's no offense to anyone. He tried for Senate president 3 or 4 times, so that's the job, and also Ways and Means. Those are the job with influence and power in there. But the modern Democratic Party is much to the left
But
of Dick.
number 2 doesn't seem
Yeah.
like a bad position
Well,
to be in.
Yeah, perhaps. We don't really know what it
Took a long
entails
time
in
to
that.
get there.
Yeah.
But realistically, I mean, as
Yeah.
we look across, it's the first real challenge Dick has had in,
Yes.
I don't know.
Many years.
No question. It's a significant one, I'll tell you that.
Yep.
It is a significant
Do you
challenge.
believe, I mean, you've got a Republican kid coming up, you know, is it a significant challenge?
Well, first of all, to use the word kid.
I'm sorry.
No, it's
Yeah.
he's younger than us, but that
Right.
doesn't take much.
Well, to me, they're
Okay.
all kids.
Okay.
I mean,
so,
sorry.
So,
Yeah,
well,
but-
but you know what I'm
Even Dick
saying.
Moore.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean,
Huh?
Even Dick Moore.
Even,
Yes.
yeah, even
Yes.
Dick is,
Yeah.
no, but I mean,
Yeah.
you've got
No.
a new candidate
Yes.
coming up. Opportunistic, is it because of the candidate's career? Is it because of the reaction of the constituents? What do
well,
you-
let me just give you a little nitty gritty about it. When Kim Roy ran, Kim Roy was a surprise announced candidate. She announced after the deadline, so she ran a sticker campaign to get on the ballot. I didn't know she was running till she met with me and she told the chairman of the Hopedale Town Committee and myself that she was running. I was stunned. She indicated at the time that she had talked to Charlie Baker at the time when he was running, and he said, gee, wouldn't it be great if we had a candidate in the area? Okay. Then, as it worked out, Dick Moore had a lot of negative publicity about his traveling and him not being in the district and so on. And against an unknown candidate, which was Kim Roy was, she had never run for anything. She lives in Sutton. Her parents are Portuguese people who lived in New Bedford, but again, not identified with that community. She got a little more than 45% of the vote, almost 46% of the vote. If it weren't for Milford and Southbridge voting very heavily for Moore, she could have won. Okay. In other words,
But-
there were 9
But
times.
now, take a step back.
Okay.
The issues, Bobby, give us an idea. I'm hearing Ryan Fatman bring some issues up, some pretty serious ones.
Mm-hmm.
Are they resonating with the constituents?
I think they are. I think one of the issues is the taxes. That he's voted to raise taxes, and Fatman has a history of voting against raising taxes, and that's a significant issue for people right now. Immigration, health care.
Very serious.
Health care. Dickie Moore was on the Hillary Clinton's health care task force, or involved in her health care program there, and healthcare has a pretty universal healthcare, Affordable Care Act, whatever you want to call it, has a pretty negative overtone right now, and he's on the other side of that issue. He's also got a lot of energy. Again, he's younger than us. He's out there beating the pavement, and who knows? I think it's going to be a good challenge, but you know, we thought Mitt Romney was a good challenge against Teddy Kennedy, and
Well,
you know, when it came down to the wire.
Now, Chris, you're sitting there with a person who's been here, who everybody sees at every event, who's brought home a lot of bacon, a lot of projects. You've got a new candidate who people really don't know in Milford and the area. How do you think it's going to play?
I think it's going to be very interesting, and I think one of the things that we keep talking about, and we refer to Ryan as a young kid, I think a lot of that comes with the fact that you put Ryan and Senator Moore next to each other, and yes, one of them is significantly younger. I think if we weren't having him run against Senator Moore, maybe he was running against someone of my age, you're not calling him a kid anymore.
I'd call you both kids.
Yeah, well, that's right. But the point is, I think that's really only an issue for some people because they're looking who he's running against. I think a lot of people right now, and you come to a point where, yes, Senator Moore has done a great job. He's served our community, but sometimes new blood and with new times and new issues, new people can bring things to the table that we haven't had in the past. Almost every one of the issues that Bob spoke about earlier, if you look at Ryan's voting record, and you've looked at his attendance, and you've looked at what he has put his name on, a lot of people like it. And a lot of people are the things that Senator Moore has done lately, like the gas tax and their pay being tied directly to inflation and saying, I never have to put my name on it anymore. It's just going to get taken care of. People don't like that because I know that I don't have, if you raise my taxes, then you have a reason for doing it. I don't have a huge problem, but at least you tell me that you're going to do it, and I get to at least see what you think about it.
When you're putting your hand in my pocket, stand up and look at me.
Don't do it from behind me.
Right.
And
Stand
just
up and
grab
look
it
at me
right
in the
there.
eyes and say, we need the money because, and I believe
And
it.
Ryan was one of the very few people that said, you know what, I'm not for that. That's not right. And you know what, to most people, if you say that to them, because a lot of people don't know about it, because they passed it very quietly, first for a reason, because they did not want the people to know that they would never have to tell them again that they were going to raise how much money they paid for their gas without even voting on it.
So now, John Fernandez. Again, I would say, here's a kid from the Heights. Can't say kid. Here's a resident candidate who, Milford boy, I've heard he has an opponent, but haven't seen much coming out of the person.
Yeah. Let me just, one more thing about Senator Moore's. One of the key things that have come up, obviously the illegals in Milford are a great issue, and Moore seems to be all over the place on that. It's, you know, you get a tutorial when you ask a question, you don't really get an answer. The really one that I find very difficult is when Governor Romney was in and they passed, quote, Romney Care, we had the Health Connector. Okay, the Health Connector worked. It basically got to where we almost had 99% of the people in the state, well, who needed to be on the Health Connector were able to access it. Moore and the people in Boston moved us over to Obamacare. They took the Health Connector website and destroyed it. Okay, basically, by shifting over, they put a new website in that's cost roughly $50 million, $60 million to be a colossal failure. There's thousands of people out there, and I've spoken to Ryan Fatman about it and other Democrats about it, who don't know what health insurance they have. They're being held in placeholders because it still hasn't been resolved. And when you fool around with someone's health care and play games with it, and then don't take responsibility for it, people get real irritated. And so a lot of these chickens are coming home to roost.
Oh, but aren't both of these guys in our legislature?
Well,
one's in the House, one's in the Senate.
Yeah, but again, we could talk about, okay, then we could also say that DeVal Patrick and Dick Moore and John Fernandez are Democrats, so they're in the same situation. It's really the local race, and I think, what do you call it? Senator Moore, as Chris said, a very energetic opponent. He's won every election he's won. He's faced incredible odds. He knocked off an incumbent, Jen Callahan. Yep. He was then only the Democratic legislature. They gerrymandered the district and moved him from Bellingham to Webster, and he won with 71% of the vote out there against a
against a whole new group that he was the right man.
But no matter what, nobody can take away. This is a serious, serious candidate.
Yep. Both well-funded, and Ryan's door knocking. He's basically done his first round of every door in Milford that matches a certain grouping. So he's done all the precincts in Milford. He did two in Southbridge. He's just finished up Dudley. And I spoke to him recently. He said the response in Dudley has been phenomenal. He said he knocks on people's doors and they're really not sure who Senator Moore is, in the sense. Now, to go to Fernandez' race, I think that's a different race because.
I mean, I believe there's a race.
Yes.
Yeah, Mark Reel's running.
But I haven't heard.
Well, actually, there's two people running.
There's two?
Yeah, there is.
Yeah.
There's,
yes. Chris Kivior.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to be, well, I didn't know there was a second.
Well, as I said to someone the other day, that I said, I thought I'd be in the cemetery before I ever saw a Republican primary. But it shows you how the district has changed in that there's actually a lot of energy. And I was speaking with John Fernandez about it. He said, "I'm wondering when I retire, will there be a Democrat that comes forward, or will there be Republicans and independents running, or whatever?" Because the district is gone, noticeably Republican. John is the only Democratic state rep in this whole Senate district. The only one. There's 7 Republicans.
When we look at Democrat versus Republican, there's a lot of people, I'm one of them, that is shunned by both parties. Well, I'm told I'm too physically conservative to be blue, right? But I'm too socially aware to be red.
Well, you're the huge, the part of the huge group that are independent voters, unenrolled voters.
Unenrolled. I was told I can't use independent.
Well, independent, they use that as a party name once. Yeah. But I think independent's inaccurate. But I don't think people want to be cubbyholed today into one thing or another.
I mean, that's one of the issues I have when I look to the far right of like the Republican Party or the far left. I will not vote dogma. Just because a party says this is what we should do, I don't buy it. There are going to be issues that I absolutely disagree on both parties.
Well, I don't know. I wonder sometimes. Barbara Hyland was a rep from down the Rentham area, and she said, I learned a long time ago, people vote for a candidate they like. They vote for a candidate who's involved in the community, who's contributed some sort of effort into the town, whether it's Boy Scouts, Little League, Girl Scouts, the school committee, this or that, to earn their stripes and to people get a general sense of whether they like them or not, whether they trust them, whether they feel comfortable with them representing them. And I think, issues you could do a spreadsheet. People
pick apart issues.
Yes.
Bobby and I will disagree on an issue. I'll disagree with you the next time and agree with him.
Yep.
But like when we do the interviews of local candidates, it really is exactly that. The people in Milford want to say, do I like you? Do I trust you?
And I think local level elections, you can throw the letter out the window. To me, I think more on a national level, yes, the parties become more important in their feelings on it, because things like abortion, that kind of stuff, a Milford legislature is not going to be doing.
Well, immigration. I'm sorry, we don't have.
That's a federal case.
We don't have the ability, as Tom said once as police chief, I can't deport. What do I do? Deport him to Rhode Island? He can't deport people.
So that's why I think on a local level, personality and whether you like a candidate and how a candidate makes you feel, and if they're going to do the job, you forget about the letter next to the name. And I think I agree with what you said. The energy and whether someone likes you or not, I think is a huge difference on whether you have an R or a D.
So again, let me go to a different town. Have you heard about these other 2 candidates against John Fernandez?
I have. I've heard from both of them. And one was a mail, something through the mail, and
Yeah, but the
we
mailers
wanna-
got me totally confused. I got this mailer from, I believe, a conservative.
Mark Reel.
No, but it wasn't from him, but it was a conservative mailer against Dick Moore.
Oh, I see.
And I had to read it twice to figure out it was against him.
Yeah.
Because it kept saying he was like in the middle. I'm looking at this thing saying,
Yeah.
well, if they're trying to convince me not to vote for him.
Well, I think part of it is,
But wait a minute.
yeah, yeah,
In Hopedale,
yeah.
did you hear about these two people because you're a politician or because you're a resident?
Both.
Okay.
Kivior happened to get a blowout in front of my house one
Oh.
day. Okay, so he's pulled up there, and I was out there talking to him, and he said, "I'm running for state rep," and I said, "Really? Where?" And he said, "Well, this was way before they even took out
Sure.
papers and things."
Yeah.
And so he said in Milford against John. He's from Milford, and then, of course, I met Mark Reel. I believe I met him last summer. No, I met him at the convention.
Republican convention.
But now, Chris, from Milford, not heavy into the politics. I mean, Ed's going to know
Yeah.
everybody because
Yeah.
it's his job.
Yeah.
But have you heard from these two people?
Absolutely not. I mean, Mark, I think, has been on the radio a couple times with Ed Thompson. He's done some interviews, and I've heard some there, but no one's knocked on my door. No one has. I haven't
Yeah.
gotten a mailing. There really hasn't been talk around town about it. So, and then, if he doesn't he blows his tire out on the neighbor's yard, you never even would have met him
That's
either.
true.
So the point is, I have, to be honest with you, heard absolutely nothing except small little tidbits.
Well, I did get a fundraising letter from Kivior.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mark Reel was recruited, I believe, by the Mass Fiscal Alliance, which is a group that's had done a mailer about.
Are they in Milford?
No. It's in other words, they recruited candidates through the state and promised them aid in running.
okay.
Okay, that sort of thing.
I'm sorry, I'm being
Yeah,
facetious,
yeah,
but
I again,
really don't
it would be,
hold
it would be
stock
like
to
we
the-
I know.
being recruited by the teachers union or whatever.
Right.
This happens to be a conservative.
if it's
group
the
that's-
Milford Teachers Union,
Yeah.
I'll listen.
Yeah.
what
But no,
I
I'm
think
saying,
MTA
I think they
stands
were the
for.
ones, I mean, you can't run without money. So if there's a promise of money. So Chris Kivior I met at the election when the casino referendum in Milford.
I got to ask a question.
Okay.
We went through this whole casino thing,
Yeah.
and now I'm hearing that we're trying to have a debate again. Now, I thought we, as a majority, said casinos are good in Massachusetts because the people, I'm not going to tell you to be a gambler. I'm not going to tell you not to be. It's legal. As long as you do it legally, have a ball. But I don't like tens of millions of dollars every year or more going to Connecticut from Massachusetts.
Did it pass? I ask you a question. I don't think it ever passed as a referendum legalizing gambling. The
No, but what's-
legislature,
what's
the
the
legislature
sentiment?
passed it,
I mean,
which
you're
is
not
totally two different
stopping
things.
gambling. If we said no casinos in Massachusetts, aren't we just making sure that the money goes to Rhode Island and Connecticut?
But I mean, as a thing of strategy, I don't ever remember there being a referendum that the people actually voted in favor of casinos. The legislature passed a law with a very complicated law that would allow a certain number of casinos, carefully crafted to almost guarantee that Boston would get one.
Yes.
Yes, because of whatever, but
Somebody with a little influence in the
yeah, I
crafting.
mean, so now this seems to be a way of revoking that law and allowing the public to vote. I could tell you when Governor Romney was in, he made a proposal, and I don't think it was a facetious one. He basically said we should have done a deal a long time ago with Connecticut to ask for money to not build
Connecticut,
casinos.
Exactly.
I'm convinced they're saying if we had paid Romney's extortion money
Well-
and guaranteed no casinos.
Well, it wasn't extortion. It made sense because you know as well as I do. I've done this game a long time, and the Connecticut casinos spent decades making sure the Massachusetts legislature never adopted gambling.
Sure.
And Sal DeMasi was their trophy state Massachusetts speaker who said he opposed gambling on moral grounds. Now that we find out the ins and outs of Sal's career and his finances, you wonder how many people were getting
So,
a lot
Chris,
of money to make sure
if it
never
goes to a
happened.
vote, yay or nay, you think on casinos in Massachusetts?
I'm telling you, I think that the residents of Massachusetts will vote it down. I
Really?
really think they will say no.
Bob?
No,
I
what
do.
was no mean? As
That
far as
No casinos.
Oh, I gotcha.
Yeah,
I really feel that.
I think so too. I agree with that.
I don't know.
See, I'm sitting there saying, you can't stop people from gambling. The fact is, it's federally legal, and I can drive to Connecticut. You know, if the issue was to gamble or not to gamble, then I can see me thinking a little differently. But if the issue is, do I leave my gambling money in Massachusetts or Connecticut? I got to tell you, I'm always going to.
Isn't this a further blow, though, to, I mean, to the casinos in Connecticut, because they've invested tens of millions in Massachusetts to
Sure.
try and get.
Absolutely.
And obviously Springfield has
they
one.
would write that. My gut feeling, I have no data,
Well-
pure speculation. If you said write off tens of millions and keep multi-tens of millions
Well,
flowing into Mohegan
but
Sun
it's-
and the other.
But we did a show here before, and you remember there was a thing on Business, I think it was the Business Weekly, that said Connecticut casinos need Massachusetts miracle. I think the health of the Connecticut casinos
well, it was
is
obvious
very.
Foxwoods needed Milford a heck of a lot
Well,
more than
they-
us.
they-
But now,
Yeah.
Brand new one in Atlantic City.
$2.5
Yeah.
Billion
billion
dollars.
open for 2 years, and they're closing
they're
the doors.
closing it
They're-
down.
Right.
Now
so,
we roll
see, I believe.
pot in Milford. Issue or no issue?
You mean the marijuana dispensary?
Marijuana dispensary in Milford.
No.
Issue or no issue?
See, I like casinos. I believe I don't believe we need gambling. I don't believe we need another intoxicant. However, if we're going to do it, then let anybody put marijuana any place they want, and let anybody put a casino any place they want, so that everybody gets to get a piece of the action.
Chris?
Well,
pot or no pot?
Well, I think it's absolutely fine, and it's a totally different situation, to be honest with you. This is a medical marijuana dispensary. People are not going to pull up at the takeout window and order pot brownies.
Oh, come on, Chris.
I mean, it's
Don't
not,
be so
it's
naive.
not going to be. I mean, it's not going to be like that.
It's going to be I want to smoke marijuana. Doc, give me a note.
Well.
Well,
It's up to the
yeah.
doctors then if they're going to give that type of prescription. That's fine.
It seems when the legislature gets involved in something, like they did in the casino thing. I was at the Special Olympics dinner in Uxbridge, and I listened to Senator Moore tell everyone how great the law the legislature had crafted was. And I got the feeling the emphasis was the law the legislature had crafted, not the reality of the law. And in essence, it's totally been a disaster because the people have generally rejected it. It's a similar thing with the Romney care transitions over. The marijuana issue, the legislature told the Department of Public Health, craft these guidelines. Then you find out that Congressman Delahunt, a former congressman, had basically quietly bought up shares in the companies that quote, the dispensaries, and every lobbyist in the Western world was getting big salary. So they took what should have been a simple thing and all larded it on
Now,
with whatever.
one of the things you hear,
Yeah.
states like Colorado, the amount of money going into the Mexican marijuana cartels is dropping. It kind of reminds me of the 20s, you know, when you took alcohol
Sure.
and all of a sudden you legalized it and you said, fine, we legalize it, we tax it.
Right.
I mean,
We'll
is that
see.
not a benefit to take the money away from the criminals?
Right, but like I said, if you're going to have it, then have it like a liquor license. Al Correia, you want to open up a marijuana, marijuana place to smoke and buy, go down to the town hall, apply for a license. You're allowed so many per town, per capita, and
I don't
you
think
apply.
I could look at my mother and tell her that was my new.
Well, then let Eddie do it for you.
Thank you. Yeah, exactly.
No, and I am in favor of that, but that's not what we're talking about tonight with the one in Milford, but I'm in favor of that as well. Tax it, regulate it. We don't, it's the same thing with alcohol. You need to, kids under 21, it's hard for them to get alcohol. They're still getting it. But the point is, they can get marijuana anywhere. You make an
I'll give you a classic example of how some people think. It's like some of the people who say, well, laws the more draconian laws can to cut gun violence. Disproven totally. I'll give you another example. In Milford, the Board of Health debated talking about banning cigarettes from CVS and Rite Aid and whatever because you were sending a message.
But again,
he was sending a
that
message.
one flipped me out because when I looked at the stings, and
Yeah.
I don't have any of the
Yeah.
empirical data,
Yeah.
but it's always from the teenager at the gap, not always, but the majority. I never saw Rite Aid, CVS get stung for selling cigarettes to a
Yes.
minor because they were already of the regulatory mentality
Sure.
that they don't sell pharmaceuticals without prescriptions.
That's right.
Yep.
So sometimes I sit there and scratch my head and say, I know ethically you're a health store,
But it was.
but if
yeah.
I wanted to control it, I would have banned it from all the small stores
Yes.
Yeah.
and only let people who work in a regulated environment. But another question, real quick. Milford has 2 camps now about capital spending. One of them is saying, okay guys, time to take a breath. We've eaten a $65 million school, a $5 million youth center. Let's take 3-4 years. I think I've even heard 5 to 10, but realistically, 3-4 years. And it's not a ban on capital, because there's $1 million built in on top of police cars and routine capital,
Yeah.
on top of the big TUI toys that's already been budgeted. Bobby, what's the view from outside of Milford when a town like us, who's doing not bad financially, wants to tighten up a little bit?
I don't see, if that's what the conclusion the FinCom comes to, I think that people should respect that. Because not only did all this capital come from planning that went into effect 30 and 40 years ago, all this capital has been built up, spent properly, designated properly, divvied up, saved, put in funds, all by the Finance Committee. These are the guys that have been sitting there and have been managing this money. So if they're saying take some time off or take a breath, slow down a little bit, I would say, well, why would you take guys that have been, or guys and girls, or people that have been managing this capital so well for so many years, and all of a sudden say, no, we like spending. We're not going to listen to you now.
Yes.
And I think it's not a matter, at least the discussions I've heard, of saying we're not going to spend on things. It's just, let's face it, we're self-insured. If the roof blew off Town Hall, if a fire happened and it burnt up a building, we got insurance funds for that. We've got stabilization for that. But it's things that I call discretionary. A new basketball field or new basketball courts, new soccer fields.
Well, the camps are very clear, and on the spending end is Selectman Murray, okay? On the spending
it doesn't
side.
matter who-
Yes. Well, let's get you. 2 of you are on the Finance Committee, so you're advocating a position. Yes, it's important. I'm not personalizing it. I'm just trying to give the lay of the land to people who, whatever. And on the most conservative side, or the non-spending side, seems to be Selectman Buckley, with Dino in the middle. As usual, it just seems.
Isn't it always?
Well, no, it works out that way. But I think it's sort of, in a way, it's a thing of semantics, because I think in reality, the town meeting certainly would put a brake on any kind of rash spending, because they do tend to listen to what the Finance Committee says, because the guidance has been, as we say, you almost take the Finance Committee for granted, because it's like the grandparent or the parent, and every once in a while you might have a tantrum and yell at
Described,
them.
I laughed at, is the most influential group of powerless people around. Because on the Finance Committee, there's one vote.
Yes.
The only reason it seems like more Finance Committee members vote is they're elected as
Well,
town
yeah.
meeting members.
But let me be a little devil's advocate here. Is I drove down the street I grew up on today, Water Street, and the fact that street is in the condition it's in, with the money that Milford has in the bank, with the people, and again, people should be brought in and said, okay, what is our plan, matching state money with local money, to take our problem roads and repair them? Don't tell me that it's so many years down
Yeah,
the
but
road.
wait a minute, Scotty does that. We're throwing in an extra
Well, I just,
500,000 on top of
well,
chapter
that's
90.
it, that's inside, 500,000, but I just pointed out Water Street, a disgrace, okay? Major street in the community, okay? So we have to look at targeting things we need with this extra money we have. That doesn't mean rash spending. It means on any kind of Taj Mahal or whatever. It means that the taxpayers who have been spending for years should get a little something back.
We go through as a town, and I mean, you bring up the point. No matter what the FinCom wants, no matter what the selectmen want, or any department head, thank God we've got a town meeting that really has been, you know, the great moderator. Because they vote on everything, and they've really kind of brought everything together and kept a lid on it.
The next thing we may be talking about, which if we get it in before the show ends, is the purchase of the water company.
Can I say something
topic
before
for
we-
next-
Yeah, but I mean, that's something that's going to be on
Because
the
it's something
horizon.
you said something, and it's been said on the radio about how much money we have. We keep saying we have 13 million in stabilization. We have 14 million.
I didn't say that, but.
But my
yeah.
point is, it's a common theme of people saying
Yeah.
how well Milford is doing financially.
Yeah.
Do you know why we have that much money in there? Because we got about 3 or 4 bills in our drawer that we've already decided that we have to pay. So that money isn't just sitting there. We have the bills that have already been
And let's
written
face
up,
it,
and we
there's
have
a
to pay
reason
them.
that we're
So-
eating a $65 million school.
Exactly.
And we're not using those words that we
Override?
don't like. You know, that kind of
Yeah.
talk, this is PG. We don't use profanity.
Mm-hmm.
And words like override and debt exclusion
Yeah,
to me
beat him out on that.
are, they'd be beeped out. But guys, thanks as always to our 6 loyal viewers. Thanks for listening to us. It's always fun because you hear the same topics and you get totally different perspectives when we do the conservative view from the liberal view.
Oh.
But the best part of it all is, you know, Bobby, you can tell how much you love Hopedale and how much you put into it. You can tell how much other people love Milford and what they put into it. It is the center of our universe. And if anything, whether you're on the blue side, the red side, or people like me who got thrown out of both and are more purple in the middle, just get involved. Let everybody know how you feel. Because if you do, Milford gets better. So as always, may God bless. Thanks for joining us, and have a good night.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Thanks,
having
guys.
us, Al.
Thank you,
Appreciate it.
thank you.
Not too long since I've been home. Been running all my life just